Being the eldest sibling is not usually easy. You're expected to lead those behind you, and this requires sacrifice. A lot of it. My parents had just 2 daughters, me, my sister Betsy, and, well, I was 3 years older than Betsy, and we have both been conceived via a cesarean operation. My parents decided to call it quit on childbearing after they had Betsy. My mother was a very pretty girl while growing up, way prettier than myself, and I had no issues with that. However, things went bad for her when she was 10 years of age. You see, Betsy loved to swim. My parents made the both of us get swimming lessons and thought it was fun sometimes. I mean, Betsy was more into it than I was, and my disinterest over time to not indulge in the sport anymore outweighed my parents' desire and willingness to subject me to it. They finally let me be. My sister, however, kept going at it till she got injured. My parents received a call from Betsy's instructor that she had been rushed to the emergency unit at a popular hospital but nearby. I was too young to understand the explanation they gave, but my sister slipped and fell during her session. She hit her face pretty hard, and she spent 4 days in the intensive care unit. After she recovered, the doctor informed my parents that the fall had affected my sister's facial nerve structure, which had resulted in facial paralysis. The encouraging thing he told us was that my sister's predicament was not permanent, although it would take years before she heals completely, and even when she does, it won't be as it was now. Betsy was discharged from the hospital, and just as the doctor had advised, my parents had her undergo physical therapy under the guidance of therapists to improve strength and conditioning. My sister Betsy was never the same after that. For a little girl who used to be praised by people for her beauty, the facial paralysis affected her self-esteem and she became really insecure. We stood by her as a family and tried regulating those who came around her. She resumed school, and you could tell by the stare coming from the other students that they had a lot to say. As time progressed, some of her classmates began picking on her. They called her Betsy the Ugly. The whole thing heavily impacted my sister negatively, and my parents got wind of it and wanted to pull Betsy out of the school, but they decided against it, as she was to graduate in a few weeks. What they did was to keep her from attending her graduation party, and I think it was the best thing to have done at that time. They even asked that she did not keep in touch with those folks over graduation, as they were toxic, and their toxicity was not what she needed. Betsy attended the same private college which I did, and we both lived together, though I was a year from graduating. This was carefully thought out by my parents, as I was tasked to look after Betsy, as I knew the insecurities that she battled. Betsy lived as a recluse. Her circle of friends was small and she rarely mingled with folk. I did not let my boyfriend back then visit me, as I knew Betsy would be reminded of the fact that she had no love interest, a situation she would attribute to her paralysis. I was glad when she finally told me she was seeing somebody. Her confidence began to grow and her low self-esteem was starting to die. I, however, discovered the guy she was seeing was not genuinely interested in her. He just used her to satisfy his sexual desires, and she would even spend her allowance on him. He could treat her like trash and play the victim card, and my sister's insecurity would make her dance to his tune simply because she did not want the attention that came from the guy to stop. This was abuse. I tried talking to my younger sister, but you know how this kind of thing plays out. She remained stubborn and clingy, and her boyfriend finally jilted her, and she relapsed into depression. It took some bouts of therapy besides the physical one to get her back on her feet. My parents demanded that she quit all forms of dating till she graduates from college. My sister did not argue. She had learned her lesson, and it was enough to make her wise. Time went quickly by, and my sister graduated, and yet, she still did not have a job. She approached my parents to inform them that she needed money to buy clothes for her reunion party. My parents inquired which reunion party she was talking about, as it was not long after she graduated from college. But she told them it was not the reunion party of her college folks, but that of her high school classmates. My parents were not in support of this. These were the same people who had, picked up on and called her Betsy the Ugly, and they had asked her to cut off from them from life. My sister tried her best to get my parents' approval and money too, but they insisted. It was best my sister stayed away from these toxic folk. My sister was not very happy. Even if she decides to go against their wishes, she had no money to buy the dress she needed. She decided to get some cash from me when I got home that day, and I agreed with my parents and tried to discourage my sister from going. But my sister was like, "I've been hiding in my shell for so long. It's time to come out and face the world." Her words seemed great and inspirational, but I wasn't sure she was ready. From my personal experience, I knew that reunion parties like these were an avenue for individuals to show off their achievements in life, while berating others. All the same, I reasoned that she was old enough to live on her own. Therefore, my parents were supposed to be giving her a degree of freedom, right? I spoke to my parents about it and used the same words my sister used. Coming out of her shell. They were skeptical, yeah, but my intervention got them to hands off it. I gave my sister the money myself to get the dress and all she needed to prepare for the party. The party day finally came, and I personally got my sister ready. My parents and I were still not sure if it was a great idea, and I offered to accompany her to the party. My sister turned down my offer. She said I would not babysit her for the rest of her life. Well, I still insisted she called me if she needed anything, but she too insisted she was going to be fine. Well, she wasn't. I was seated in the parlor with my parents when she called me about 45 minutes later. I picked up my sister's call, but she could barely even say a word from the other end, and I called out her name twice before she spoke out and asked me to come pick her up at the coffee somewhere. She was, and I got a taxi. It just didn't add up. Nobody organizes a reunion at a coffee shop, and I was sure my sister did not leave the house to go to a coffee shop. I asked what she was doing at a coffee shop when she was supposed to be partying, and that's when she burst out crying profusely over the phone. Her tears shot fear inside of me. My parents knew something was wrong, but I had no time to give explanations. I got to the coffee shop and my sister was outside in tears. It took me about 5 minutes to console her before we both boarded a cab. On our way home, she began telling me how most of her schoolmates who showed up with their lovers began picking on her with the whole Betsy the Ugly thing again. They mocked her for showing up and attributed it to her looks. We got home and my parents, after listening to us, blamed me for encouraging my sister to go. I felt somewhat guilty, yeah. To make matters worse, my sister sank into a pitiable state of depression, worse than ever. My parents did not let me have any peace as they were busy heaping the blame on me. I had to obtain permission from my workplace to take care of my sister, who we feared could be at the point where she wants to hurt herself. What I did not tell my family then was that I was engaged to Marvin, a very handsome guy with some fat pockets. Marvin and I have been together for some time, and I was about to bring him to my family's before the drama with my sister occurred. After my sister's relapse, I knew it would not help to bring my very rich and handsome fiancé to introduce me, to the family, when my sister was being mocked for not being able to even get a lover. I asked Marvin that we put the whole family visitation thing on pause till I was ready. He questioned what I meant by ready, and even thought I began cheating on him. I had to explain to him the exact situation at hand, and though he was not happy with my suggestion, he accepted to give me just time to help nurse my sister back to a sound emotional place. After about a month, I felt my sister was emotionally stable, though. She was still undergoing some therapy. It looked like the right time to bring my family to the knowledge of my relationship status, so I invited Marvin to the house. I introduced him as my fiancé, and he started his intentions to get married to me. My sister stood up and left us as the mention of marriage, and I knew it hit her like a ton of bricks. Especially the part where we noted we wanted to get married in 2 months. My parents did not say or do anything to make Marvin feel like they were against us, but they noted 2 months was way too soon to plan a wedding and asked that we extended the time a bit. Marvin, who sought for every opportunity to please his would-be in-laws, said we would both put heads together and came up with something. After he took his leave, my parents came at me ferociously, and I got confused. They said it was insensitive of me to bring a man to the house and talk about marriage when my sister had recently relapsed after being mocked at for not having a man in her life. Well, I struggled to make sense of what they were saying, but I couldn't. I am their daughter as much as my sister is. I won't argue that she was going through a lot, but I've been a good sister to her so far, haven't I? My parents were supposed to be happy for me, that one of their daughters would soon be walking down the aisle and not kill me before my time. I reached my breaking point when they said I had caused my sister's relapse and still went and acted like I did not care. I had taken enough of the blame, and so I flared up. I began recounting how I played the nanny for my sister ever since her accident occurred all those years ago. Well, I had resigned from my job to look after her and almost put my relationship in jeopardy. Now, if those sacrifices don't show my concern for my sister, then I know what else would. I told my parents that my sister was going through a hard time, but it did not mean my life was to go on pause. I never knew my sister was standing right there with tears running down her cheeks. As I said, I planned on doing something else with my life. The argument had caught her attention, and she came to listen. I turned around when I heard her footsteps running toward her room, and I felt bad. It took me the whole of the next day pleading with her to forgive me. She went ahead to thank me for all I've been doing for her, and after we had settled, I decided to push the wedding of Marvin and me 3 months further. I began taking my sister out each time I was to see Marvin. A friendship was soon established. Everyone was at peace until last week, when my sister came up with the most absurd request ever. I had returned very tired from work and was not in the mood to engage in a discussion, but I had no option since it was my sister. She started by saying her friend was getting married and she needed to attend. My sister did not have many friends in college, and I could not count any after her college, so I was curious to know who this friend was, and why my sister claimed she needed to go. Betsy went ahead to tell me it was one of her high school classmates, and I chided her immediately, for several reasons. My parents had warned her to cut off from them, and her previous experience at the reunion party was enough reason for her to do so. I mean, she relapsed after the experience, and my parents blamed me for that. I told my Betsy that these people she called her friends were nothing close to that. I told her she did not need my permission or that of anyone to go, but she certainly did not and would not get my support. Yeah, I equally noted that she should not call me if things turn out bad. Betsy said the reason she needed to go to the wedding was for her self-esteem. It did not add up, but I was interested in knowing how going to a wedding would improve her self-esteem when it was the same circle of people who would come to show off as usual. My sister said she needed to go to prove to them that, she was doing well, way better than the rest of them. I gave my sister a confused look because I needed her to explain how she was doing well. She didn't have a job or a source of income. She didn't have a man in her life, so what was she going to show off? Betsy said she would put on a show to make them believe she was better than them, and the looks of bewilderment on their faces were going to help her regain her self-esteem. I wasn't willing to get involved in this or support her plan. Her plan did not go as planned the last time she wanted to come out of her shell, and I just wished her good luck and expected her to leave as I was tired and sleepy. But the next thing she said took the sleep out of my eyes. Betsy said she needed more than my good luck wishes. She said she needed me to let her borrow my fiancé. I sat up so I could be sure I was not in the same kind of dream. How could she be asking that I gave her my fiancé to put up a show? I turned her down, and her request, well, I discovered she was really serious about it. I told her to hire someone else for that role, as I won't let my man be used like that. But Betsy pleaded. She claimed my man was perfect, rich, tall, handsome, and she would be the envy of her classmates once they see that, well, she has what every lady's dying to have. I want my sister to overcome her insecurity, but this was not the way to go about it. Her plan was centered on trying to blend with the trend, and I tried making her see that I could fall out again with our parents, but she claimed she had spoken with them, and they were highly in support of it. I asked what would happen when her high school classmates discovered it was all a hoax, and she was single. But my sister said she just needed to rub it in their faces and would entirely cut them off from her life after the show. I cringed at the idea of letting my sister borrow my fiancé for the wedding of a friend who wasn't a friend in the real sense of the word. But I guess making sacrifices is part of what it means to look out for the family, and I spoke with Marvin about the request my sister had made, and though he was a little bit taken back, he noted he would go ahead with the plan if it was okay with me. It was not okay by me, but I gave the go-ahead. There's a limit to everything, and, well, this is how far I'm willing to go as regards to making sacrifices for my sister. I just hoped she would stick with the plan, and this act would be a solution to her insecurity challenges. I would not find it funny if she woke up tomorrow and demand she gets married to my fiancé just to put up a show. Heads would roll before it happens. Don't blame me for suggesting my sister could be a man-snatcher. I'm a human and a woman. No woman who's in love ever wants to share her man, not even with her sister. Update number 1. Remember when I talked about the height of sacrifice, which I could make for my sister to be letting her borrow my fiancé? Well, she's back for more. As you're all aware, I had talked to my fiancé into going with the whole thing, and my sister demanded that they went out occasionally before the wedding. I didn't see the point of going out to spend time with my man. The agreement and arrangement was to show up with him at the wedding of her schoolmates, and that was to be the end. I questioned the several outings with my man. Betsy claimed it was all part of the act. She said the outings with my fiancé would serve 2 different purposes. It was more like a rehearsal for the big day, and while they were at it, they would take pictures of them visiting different places as proof that they could not do without each other. This was crazy, and my fiancé had to confirm I was okay with it. As a human, I did not like the idea of someone else, not even my sister, spending time with my fiancé, but my sister was already into the scheme, and pulling the plug could break her. I gave my fiancé the go-ahead, but I counted the days to the wedding. The day of the wedding finally came, and my sister and my fiancé were both looking like they were a couple. They had rehearsed for so long that one would almost think there was chemistry between the both of them. They went to the event quite late. The wedding ceremony had already ended, but the reception had just begun. This was all part of my sister's big plan. She wanted everyone to be gathered while she made her grand entrance. Coming late would ensure they all saw her. Her plan worked. According to what my fiancé told me, Betsy became the actual center of attraction the moment they walked in handing hands. It was as though they were the latest couple in town and not even those who just, gotten wedded. Her classmates looked with curiosity as they wondered who it was that accompanied Betsy to the event. They did not want to immediately believe Marvin was her fiancé because he was too good-looking. and the car they came in was a Pointer. He was loaded with cash. So, they gradually approached Betsy and she introduced Marvin as her fiancé. They could not doubt her as Marvin acted like he was head over heels in love with her. She loved the satisfaction that came with their look of surprise, and she knew they would go on to talk about her long after the event was over. Betsy left the party with her pride and ego restored. I was happy for her. At least I could have my man back now that the whole thing was over. Or so I thought. Betsy met me yesterday to tell me she needed to move in with my fiancé. That's right. She said some of her friends had been reaching out to her after the wedding party and they wanted to pay her a visit. She had told them she lived with my fiancé, hence her reason for wanting to temporarily move in with him to save her face. That's the thing with a lie. You always need another lie to cover it. I reminded my sister of her promise to cut from these people, but she still promised to do so after they must have visited her. Their visit, according to her, would kill any single doubt that Marvin was not her man. I'm still considering her request. Update number 2. People are in the habit of taking your liberty for granted, and this is something my sister is currently doing. I granted her request to temporarily move in with my fiancé, and this is me going against my decision to not make more sacrifices. I spoke with Marvin and he was very much uncomfortable with the idea. He felt we were taking the whole thing way too far at this point and he was right. We would be getting married in a few weeks and it did not make sense parading some other person as his woman. It took a lot to get him to complain. My sister moved in with my fiancé and was supposed to stay for just a week, something I had never done. Her colleagues visited and were awed by what they saw. Her 1-week stay was over just like the act, but Betsy refused to take her leave. What was meant to be a week was gradually becoming 2. I went to my fiancé's home to see what was keeping my sister there, and I wasn't willing to take any chances with my relationship. I'd already taken enough, you know. I got there, and my sister was so relaxed, like she was the lady of the house. I questioned what she was doing at Marvin's place, and she said a change of environment was doing her good. I began sensing my sister Betsy was now beginning to take my show of love for granted. What did she mean by change of environment? This was my fiancé's environment, and she had overstayed her welcome. I asked her to leave, and she picked offense. She said I was not one to tell her what to do, and besides, it's not my house yet. What an ingrate! It seemed as though she had gotten used to the comfort that the home of my fiancé provided, and had developed the unwillingness to leave. My fiancé was right there as we argued, but he chose to not get involved. I expected him to speak up, but he did not. I went back home and spoke to my parents about it, and they said I should try and be a little bit more bearing with my sister as a result of her history of insecurity and low self-esteem. They said I was not supposed to be angry when my fiancé had not expressed his desire for my sister to leave his home. I didn't buy their talks anymore. The whole insecurity talk was beginning to get on my nerves. And rather than recall their daughter from my fiancé's home, they asked me to be understanding. My sister came back home the next day, which was yesterday, and we're not on talking terms at all. My fiancé had been trying to reach me, and I was angry for his inaction during the bout I was having with my sister at his apartment. I finally picked up his call yesterday and asked that we meet today so he can explain himself. I would be going to his house later in the day. Update number 3. You would not believe what I'm about to say, but it's the truth. I met with my fiancé 5 days ago and he apologized for not getting involved in the argument I had with my sister. He said he felt it was a sister thing and we could settle it ourselves. He went on to say that he had politely asked my sister Betsy to leave his house the next day, as her stay was beginning to paint a picture that wasn't there. He went on to say something that got me offended, though. My offense was not with him, it was with my sister. The whole act had gotten into my sister's head pretty badly, and she began wanting something real between them. Marvin said my sister's friend had visited them and teased my sister Betsy on when she was going to be getting married, as her life was so perfect. Betsy promised them an invite to the wedding that was not far away, and she began making advances at him ever since. That was her reason for not wanting to leave. The change of environment story was all a lie. She wanted an excuse to remain at Marvin's place so she could successfully seduce him into falling for her. Humans are so unbelievable. In my previous update, I made a comment that was suggestive of the fact that my sister could turn out to be a man-snatcher. And I wasn't wrong, apparently. The insecure, low self-esteem sister of mine now wants what I have. I was willing to overlook all this, as I understand that feelings can spring up when people get close for a while. But I got infuriated when my fiancé told me of how my sister had badmouthed me, calling me all sorts of dirty names. A lady who slept with different guys during college. She told Marvin all manner of concocted stories just to discredit me in his sight. Marvin's claim was not false. He showed me some text messages that my sister had been sending to him for a while. I decided I was going to make her pay. She's my sister, but she's now acting like an enemy, so I'm going to treat her like one. I won't speak to my parents about my sister's betrayal. They will just handle the whole matter with kid gloves on. I decided to deal with it myself. I told Marvin to start responding to my sister in a way that suggested he was into her. He has been doing this for the past 3 days, and my sister's falling right into the trap. She'd be surprised at what I hit her with. I would be getting married in a few weeks, and my sister, who's supposed to be by my side, will not be in attendance. She would still be in her recovery phase after what I'm about to do to her. Betsy had been flirting with Marvin behind my back, and she's gone as far as sending her nudes to him, just so she could remain relevant. I wanted to mess with her so she would think I was the fool. So, I met my parents one evening to complain about how things were going bad between Marvin and me. I claimed he was becoming distant and was always too busy to spend time with me. My parents sympathized with me and told me to stay positive, but you should have seen the smile on my sister's face. She was happy to hear I was having issues with my fiancé. This gave her the impression that she was doing a good job in displacing me. She didn't bother hiding her excitement. I was beginning to get cold feet about following through with my plans, as it was going to be harsh. But her excitement reignited my passion for revenge. I gathered her nude photos and leaked them on Facebook while making a lengthy write-up about the betrayal of a sister. You know, the way of the internet, right? One person sees a thing and it spreads like wildfire, and my sister's friends came across it and did their work for me. The mockery which they subjected my sister to was terrible, but it gave me joy, lots of it. My sister's cover was blown. She was forced to distance herself with them, and she cried for days, and my parents wondered what the issue was. I initially kept quiet to see if my sister would come clean, as I was sure that she knew I was the cause of her problems, but she said nothing. I finally told them to not waste their time showing her care, as she was a sneaky jerk who sought attention, and my parents blasted me for not showing concern for my sister. I didn't blame them. They were aware of the sacrifices for her, but they did not know she had repaid me by trying to snatch my man. I decided to bring them up to speed. I brought up the text messages and the nude photos while telling them about Betsy's betrayal. My parents were shocked. Their pity for my sister soon turned to disgust, and they told her it served her right she lost the grip which she had on them all these years. They would never fall prey to her low self-esteem tricks again. My marriage with Marvin is in 2 weeks, but I've already moved in with him. With the way my sister's acting, she could poison me if I remained in the same house with her.